Welcome to the Manglegrove, part one of what will probably be 4 videos here. We're not going to be talking about the topology or the assets of the Manglegrove. We're going to be talking about the plot. Plot is something that's very hard to do right, because even if you've got a good plot, if you can't present it, then the player's never going to feel it. And this is something that indie devs struggle with a lot. So if you've ever played an indie game where you feel like the plot should be good, but it's just not hitting, it's because their presentation usually falls through. And this is something even pros have a hard time with, but let's go ahead and try to learn their tricks, because this part is really well done. So we've just struggled through the Manglegrove's first section. It's been a little bit more open and free than most of the areas we've been so far, and we can feel that the reins of the tutorial are starting to slip. When we reach here, there's an empty hut, which has a name, so it's probably got someone who's supposed to be here, but they're not here at the moment. There's a broken bridge, and down below there are teeming monsters. We're not told, go fix the bridge by doing X. We're just told, you're going to have to fix the bridge, figure it out. From a topological perspective, there's no difference in the level design. We just go down here and click a button. In fact, it's super simple because we're not even allowed to go back the way we came. It stops us. So from the design of the physical level itself, this is extraordinarily basic. But from the narrative design, the player is already shifting gears. They're no longer in a passive voice. They're no longer being told what to do or who to follow or where to go. They're now just being told to figure it out. And sure, there's only one choice, but it's their choice to figure out. And this is a well-understood tradition. You can see treatises on San Andreas where they talk about how because the player has to step into the glowing circle to make it happen, it's an active statement, even though there's no other options. Same deal here. Because we have to do this, it's an active statement, even though there's no other choices. So we have been freed from the passive voice when we're being told to go do this stuff on our own, even though the level isn't substantially more complicated. But in order to make a plot happen, in order to make the player really get into it, you need to control the tension and pacing of the event. So let's talk about that. Let's go ahead and talk about some of the ways an indie dev might do it. How would you do it? The player gets here to this bridge, and you want to have an event where the player has to go solve a bridge building thing. They have to repair the bridge before they can move on. How would you do it? Well, a lot of indie devs would have it so that when the player got here, the bridge would be intact. And then they step onto it, and boom, up comes an enemy, and it breaks the bridge, and it fights the player. That's tried and true, but it has a couple of issues. The first issue is that you're ramping from a very slow pace with very little tension up to an extremely high pace, high tension situation. That's usually too fast. Now, you can build to it. If the player walks partway across the bridge and the bridge starts to shake and the steam splashes up on each side and then the enemy pops out and fights you. That's a good example. You would ramp up the tension and the stress and then reveal the boss monster on the bridge. And then the player runs away and maybe... what? Well, there's the problem. If you don't fight the boss monster right then, you've already ramped the tension and stress really, really high, and simply running away is going to just leave that with nowhere to go. It's going to fizzle out, and it's going to feel really like a downer. And if you fight the boss, then once you're done fighting the boss, you're done. The tension is dissipated, and now you're stuck at a broken bridge with no tension, not even the tension you had before you started. So, that's a little bit tough. That's tough to do. There are ways to do it right, but you'd have to think about it. You'd have to make sure that you understand what you're trying to do and the sort of rolling pattern that you're aiming for. Another option is you might just find the bridge and it's already broken, and you don't get any hints. You're told that you have to fix it, but you don't know who or how or what. And this is tried and true. Final Fantasy I did that. You find the broken bridge, you can't figure anything out. Turns out the king can fix the bridge, but he's not going to do it until you kill off the first and last boss of the game. So, what advantage does that hold? Well, it ramps up the tension just a tiny bit, but it keeps it there. So that's pretty nice, right? Just give yourself a little bit of a tension kick and stay there. However, that's not very much of a tension kick. It's probably good if you're just going to, the rest of the first part of Final Fantasy I is you wandering around in the woods beating up goblins, but if the tension had been ramped up very high, that would have felt like a letdown. So you only ramp it up a little bit because you're only going to be doing slightly tense things. You got to keep in mind the rolling pattern here. How do we do it here? Well, we're told to take the night off, take a nap, and then the next morning we're just told to figure it out. How do they make the tension feel halfway between those two? How do they give us the right amount of tension for the rolling pattern that we're aiming for? We want to have kind of a mid-grade adventure, not mucking around in the woods doing nothing and not fighting a boss monster all the time, sort of in the middle. Keeping in mind that this is aimed at 10-year-olds. This is the first time we've been allowed to use our luminary power. Until now, it has always just gone off whenever the plot demands. So that's a really good way to make sure that we understand that we have activated, we have an agency here.
Around the clock. 1, 2, 3, look out, trees. Oh, a woodcutter's life is the life for me.
Alright, and then the vision begins. There are a couple of dead giveaways. There's a grain filter, there's some color grading, and there is a radial blur. I'm not sure how many of those you can see on YouTube, but trust me, they're all there. So that tells us right away that we are looking into the past. That's just standard speak, it's the standard visuals you use for, this is a vision of the past, look into my crystal ball, that sort of feel. We're also given a quick little glance of a new character, the woodcutter. And the woodcutter is being presented as a friendly guy who wouldn't hurt anything except a tree. And he loves his work, and you like this guy because he's friendly and happy and cheerful and wouldn't hurt anybody. So we're being presented with a new character, and this is a key part of the puzzle. Because when you threaten a third party, you get a different sort of tension than when you threaten the player. Especially if the third party is harmless. If whatever's going to threaten this guy threatened us, then it would be a threat against a master thief and some kind of weird god mage. And it's like, yeah, okay. I can understand why someone might want to threaten those guys. But when you're threatening a woodcutter, come on. What kind of jerk would do that? Especially such a cheerful guy. Look at this.
What in the world?
Oh, no. And everything about this is just presented to make us like this guy. Now, we've probably gotten used to how these characters look by now, but if you take a second and think about it, the character is designed specifically to look as likable as possible. And also, this entire sequence is written as if it was in the original Dragon Ball manga. So, keep that in mind for this next sequence.
I repaired the bridge only yesterday, and now some blighter's gone and destroyed it again. If I ever find out who did this, I swear I'll...
So here we've got a trail of breadcrumbs that tells us a lot about this situation. First, it tells us that this woodcutter can fix the bridge, so we've got to find him. Gives us a lead right away. So immediately, we have our pacing and our tension increased because we now have an objective. We need to find this guy. We also know this guy's being harassed repeatedly, day after day. And that also ratchets up our tension. So we're really starting to get a sense that this is not a peaceful situation. It could be a fairly threatening situation, but keep in mind that we're just hearing birds chirping and the sound of the music is very soft now. So we're not really being told that this is critical at this moment. We're being told, relax, let this unfold. So our tension is going up, but not as much as it could be. It's just sliding up.
Ta-da! You called? Tricky devil at your service.
As I said, it's aimed at 10-year-olds. But this character is obviously the harasser, and he's obviously evil, or at least annoying. And it's being presented as a reveal here, but it's not being revealed by interacting with the player. It's being revealed by interacting with a third party, an NPC. And this is a great way for us to learn more about this enemy in a context that isn't being polluted by the player's strange supernatural powers and weird situation. And of course, what's being revealed is that he's a real jerk.
I went to a lot of trouble to smash at this stupid bridge. I'm not about to let you fix it again. Here, get a load of my devilishly tricky shapeshift beam.
Alright, so the first two lines are because this is aimed at children. He's reminding us of what we've already learned. We already know he smashed up the bridge because he popped out of it and said, "Here I am again." We already know that the other guy can fix it because he fixed it yesterday. But they're hammering it home here because they're the important points, and we're 10. Then they introduced Chekhov's gun. Now, normally when you think about introducing Chekhov's gun, you think about it as being up on the mantle because that's how it's described in, the classic example. But in reality, when you introduce a Chekhov's gun, you can fire it right away, and that's what they do here. So by introducing and immediately displaying Chekhov's gun, they give us a sense of the stakes here, and they ratchet up our tension even more. Oh no! He turned into a dog, the dog that's been following us around. Now what? Well, we now know what the dog is. We know that we need to turn the dog back into the woodcutter. We don't know how to do that, but we know that this guy probably can. This devil probably can. Also, we can think about, what about that Chekhov's gun? What about that transformation beam? Are we going to be able to defeat that? Is that something we're going to be able to handle? So, our tension is getting ratcheted up. We've seen the effects, we know what it can do to us, and we know we can't really do anything against it. We don't have any powers to prevent transformation. So, our tension is slowly going up with every line, with every new micro-reveal, every new flash of the scene. We're increasing our tension little by little by little. But the music is super slow, super peaceful. It's bringing our pacing is down. So, the idea here is slow and tense.
Now that's what I call tricky. 1 minute you're a silly old woodcutter, the next minute you're a smelly old dog. I'm a devilish genius.
Now, this is obviously mostly character development, although in case you really didn't understand the idea that the guy turned into a dog, they'll tell you. So we're being shown what this guy thinks of himself, and this is obviously setting up a flaw that we can exploit. This guy is so full of himself that he'll go out of his way to just torment people for no reason. And hopefully the boss fight, which I haven't played yet, will involve that in some way. Hopefully we'll be able to exploit his meanness to hoist him on his own petard. Maybe we'll be able to reflect his transformation beam back on him or something.
Now, what mischief shall I get up to next? Oh, so much trouble to cause so little time.
And here we're being told that, yeah, we need this guy to turn the dog back into the woodcutter, and he's going to go do some more mischief. So we're going to try and track him down wherever he's gone off to. Now, it's important that this guy is going off to do more mischief. He's not just going to be kicking back at home or anything like that. This adds a little bit more tension because he's going off to do something else to someone else. And we're like, okay, well, this is someone that needs to be actively stopped, not someone we can just wander up to later on and be like, oh, hey, look, you need to be punished for past crimes. No, he's still committing crimes.
Bye, doggy.
He's walking past the house to tell us which way to go.
An empty treasure chest. I think I've just hit upon my most devilish trick yet.
Now, he went back the way we came, and if you'd explored it fully, you already would have seen this empty treasure chest. But even if you haven't, it's really the only treasure chest in the area, so it won't be too hard to find. Notice that it cut to black before he spoke. That tells us that the vision is over, and that that's the final statement. This is the tension level they want us to stop at. So, by sitting here and telling us all this stuff, they're increasing our tension to a moderate level, but they're making sure that the pace is still slow. They're saying, this is not critical. You don't have to run. You don't have to dodge bullets or anything. But there is some danger here, and you need to worry about that. And that is a great way to do it. They introduced a third party, an NPC that we like, and then they threaten that NPC, and it ratchets up our tension level. At the same time, they tell us all we need to know about how to save the NPC, how to resolve the situation, and where to find the bad guy.
What the heck just happened? You touched that plant?
So this part is mostly going to be just a little bit of, well, if you're aiming at 10-year-olds, you have to be a little bit explicit, but it's also going to be a little bit of development for our buddy. Is his name Eric? Something like that.
You really expect
Eric.
me to believe that this mutt here is actually the woodcutter?
So yeah, they're telling you what they already told you, but at the same time, they're also letting you know what sort of person Eric is.
Huh. There's never a dull moment with you around. I'm gladder every day I broke you out of jail.
And I really love this part of the game. They are really aggressive about making sure that you always know that at least one person in your life likes you a whole lot. This is not a game where you are ever going to be totally isolated or alone, at least not unless there, is a major twist involving something later on in the game, which we won't get into. But you won't ever feel like you're adventuring on your own or like the world is against you. Even if the king hates you, Eric likes you. Eric is glad that he did some incredibly dangerous stuff to rescue you for no reason.
Well, all I know for sure is that we're never going to get out of this forest until we get that bridge fixed.
And this is a good time to refocus you on the task at hand. It's the call to action.
And if what we just saw was true, Rover here is the only one who can fix it. Why don't we find that chest and have a word with our mischievous friend?
Now that's the call to action there is really pretty aggressive. If you weren't aiming at 10-year-olds, you might have done that a little bit more gracefully. But now you have an exact idea of what you need to do next. You have the backstory. Your tension is running pretty high, but your pacing is nice and low. So we've got that sort of, yeah, let's go do something feel where you're like, this pacing, I can handle it. I can go at whatever pace I want, and there's something cool to do.
Let's head back the way we came and see if we missed it somewhere.
We didn't miss it anywhere. We opened it. It was empty. Anyway, that's all I wanted to cover for this. If you wanted to learn more about how to do presentations like that, how to do those kinds of plot events and cutscenes and stuff, remember that it's a lot about the setup rather than about the actual writing of each individual line. The only reason that this pacing could be grown the way it was is because they decided that there was going to be a woodcutter involved, and they were going to make you have to rescue the woodcutter. That's the lever that allows them to push the tension around. If that woodcutter hadn't been there, they might have found some other way to do it. But the point is, you need a lever. You need something to push the player with, and an NPC is a good one. There are lots of other options. If you have a favorite set of tutorials about it or books or whatever, feel free to leave comments down below because I'm always eager to know everybody else's tips and tricks. And in the next video, we'll probably talk about the level design rather than the plot.